Good day. Welcome to our channel, DS Nutra.com. Again, my name is Collin Thomas. I'm the principal consultant here at DS Nutra Consulting. We specialize in dietary supplement industry and everything quality assurance and quality control in the supplements, cannabis, and pharmaceutical industries. Also food and cosmetics. So everything that has to do with quality control, quality assurance, regulation, and the environment with your documentation. So welcome. Today I want to speak briefly about the difference between a scientifically valid method and method validation. And the reason for this is during the course of being a laboratory owner and a principal consultant, I've often gotten the questions, or we've gotten the comments, or people would call into our business, and the conversation normally goes something like this: "Hi, I've got this product, or I've got this ingredient, and I would like to get it tested. I just want to confirm, do you have a validated method to test this product?" And most often my answer is no, we do not. And sometimes, most times, they are taken aback by that answer. And that is because, depending on who you're speaking to, you realize that sometimes your customers do not understand the requirement or what it is that they're actually asking for. And so there is a big difference between a scientifically valid method and a validated method. Now, if you're coming from the pharmaceutical industry, it requires that you use validated test methods. Now, if you're in the dietary supplements industry, the regulation states that you should be testing your products or your ingredients or your compounds using a scientifically valid method. Here is where it gets tricky. Within the dietary supplement regulation, as opposed to the pharmaceutical regulations, it does not define what's a scientifically valid method. So the FDA in their regulation does not define the term scientifically valid. And so it's often used interchangeably, or at least customers think they're interchangeable, and they're not. A validated method is a very precise way of how a test is done. For instance, and let me consult my notes, if you're performing a validated method, then it means that at some point, some scientist or chemist somewhere, at some point in the product cycle, would have tested for these guidelines, including accuracy, precision, range, robustness, limit of detection, limit of quantification, stability of the solutions, stability of the standards, degradation, and a few others. All right, so very precise set of requirements that need to be met. And normally how that would be done, if we can even take it further, is the persons or the company that's requiring a validation sometimes would either have their research scientists already worked it out, and so if they're transferring it to a third-party lab, and they would say, "Hey, we want you to test our products using this validated method," then they would give you that method, and you will do what is called a method transfer, following all those criteria that I outlined earlier. Now, with a scientifically valid method, that's not defined. And so now it's left up to you, the product owner, to some extent, to say, what do you want included, or what should be included in a scientifically valid method? And sometimes, depending on, again, who your customers are, they may not know what they want, and some people do. And so what we did, or what we have done in our company, in our laboratory company, is when we develop methods or we research methods, we look at certain criteria. So first of all, sometimes for a scientifically valid method, one of the things that we would do is, can we find this method somewhere in a research or peer-reviewed journal? And the reason why we do that is that the supplements industry, unlike the pharmaceutical industry, moves at a rapid rate. And so there are always new products come into market. And products come to market faster than their test or methods developed to adequately test these products. And so if you're going to take the time to develop and validate a method, that could take months. What we typically get from a dietary supplement customer is, here, hey, I have a product, I would like to get this tested. And there have been no further, up to that point, no test has been done. So you've got a product that has been developed, but no test or real test done based on that development. Sometimes you have tests that are done, you have methods that are developed, but they're not shared. And so now you have a problem where you come to a third-party lab, any third-party lab, and they could, let's take for instance, most labs have a method for caffeine. There's a USP test method for caffeine, and some other labs, most labs would use some other method that they may have developed that has worked well for them. And for every raw material, you're going to get just about the correct results if there's nothing fancy to that raw material. So caffeine powder, you test it 100 times, most labs are going to get within that 2% range of that 100% of whatever that value is for just a regular normal caffeine sample. Well, what happens when a company develops a proprietary blend or some ingredient that is mixed with caffeine, or there's a special coating on that caffeine? And now you said, well, I would like this tested with a validated method. And I would say to you, well, do you want me to develop that method and validate that method? And they said, no, we only have 2 weeks. We want to get this to market now. I just want to know that you have a validated method for caffeine. And so we have to respond that we do not. But we can test it with a scientifically valid method that we have developed for caffeine, but it may or may not be appropriate for your sample and your product if that sample or product has something that is special about it outside of just that caffeine raw material. And so it's left to you, the customer, to define what a scientifically valid method is. For us, if it's something totally new, we try and find a research paper from a peer-reviewed article or journal, and we can start there, where we say, okay, this company has developed something similar, someone has done something similar, they ran it at this particular wavelength, they ran it using this particular type of column, it is very specific for powders, the matrix, it can be done in solution. And so at least we start there. And so we can base our methods and on something that has some sort of history, or we can take what you have and try and develop a method, at least do a shortened version. But I think the essential thing is that you have to define what scientifically valid means for you. At a minimum, at least we believe that a scientifically valid method, which is not going to be as robust as a validated method, should include precision, repeatability, should be accurate, and you should be able to reproduce that method. You should be able to reproduce those set of results. So again, if you send us a proprietary ingredient and we are able to test it, and we figure out from our initial testing that yes, we are getting the results that you expect at your specification or close to your specifications, we should be able to take that material the following week or the next day, test it under those same conditions, and get results that are very similar. And so, because we can reproduce that method, And because the results are within a particular range, or they have a particular precision, at a minimum we can say, okay, we are using a scientifically valid method. And if we have a journal reference that we can say, okay, we took this, here is our journal reference, we modified this method, or we went to the USP compendium and we found something that is similar, and we said we've modified this method, then in our eyes we can ascertain that we have now used a scientifically valid method. Again, let's bear in mind that the dietary supplements regulations for analytical labs does not require and did not require or did not define the term scientifically valid. All right, so this is not pharmaceutical. The regulation is different than a pharmaceutical lab. So please bear in mind, scientifically valid and method validation are very different. I would require, and if I'm giving offer consultation to you as a customer, I would at least recommend to you that if you are using or developing a dietary supplement and you want to get it tested, I would recommend that you require a scientifically valid method. I would recommend that at least the lab be able to reproduce that method. Now, you may have to pay something a little bit extra, but you should be able to have a minimum reproducibility. You should have a defined set of testing conditions, and that test should have a level of precision. And again, you should define what level of precision you're expecting. And if you can't, then that lab may do it for you. But you cannot complain about the test result if you do not even know what you should be getting. All right, so again, in summary and in closing, there's a big difference between a scientifically valid method and validated method. All right, and it's up to you, the customer, if you're in the dietary supplement field, to at least give your third-party lab some criteria for testing. What I would recommend, and what we recommend in our sister company, Cosmetic Analyticals, what we recommend and what we often ask is this: hey, can you provide us a test method for this product? And if you're able to provide us that, we can take that method, we can try and replicate that method as is, or we may have to do some modification. But at least we have, again, a foundation from which we are building. And if we do a modification, then we can list or take note that this method was modified. And so the next time you send that method, you send that sample to us, we can then go ahead and use that same method over and over again. And that, because of the reproducibility, would then be a scientifically valid method. The problem sometimes that we run in is that a customer may send one formulation one time, 6 months later, same ingredient, but a slightly different formulation. And then the question, well, you tested this for us the last time. No, we did not. We tested something that was different. We tested a different formulation. You kept the specifications limit the same. The matrix looked the same, but now you have a different set of ingredients in that product. So therefore, it's a different formulation. All right, so again, there's a big difference between method validation and scientifically valid method. The FDA did not define what a scientifically valid method is when it comes to dietary supplement. So we would urge you, or your lab or the third-party lab that you're working with, at least to set up their own criteria as to what is a scientifically valid method. And so at least you will be able to have reproducible and repeatable test methods for your product. All right, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to visit this YouTube channel. Again, send us an email. It is cthomas@dsnutra.com. Again, our email, if you have questions or you want a consulting done, it is cthomas@dsnutra.com. All right, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.